Hi, good evening, everyone. We have a full house tonight. I see. Thank you for coming. I'm Jeanette Alamia, District Director of Guidance for the Huntington Schools, and I welcome you to tonight's event, PSAT and MSQT, which is grade 11. Now what? We're going to talk about scores and our great. We have a great partnership with the Princeton Review, and our presenter Elisa Cook will be sharing about how to interpret those PSAT and MSQT scores that your children and you have access to through the College Board account. And so tonight's event will be recorded as usual and will be posted on the website as well as on the YouTube channel of the district for future viewings and also for those that couldn't make it to tonight's event. So without further ado, I'd like to present the Princeton Review representative, Alyssa Cook.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming out this evening. I appreciate it. I know it's a hectic time. Thanks. But I always like to start out these presentations by giving everyone a pat on the back because this is like a very stressful time, when you're in your junior year and you're prepping and you're trying to decide, there's all these things that are being thrown at you and, it's a lot, especially if, you're someone that maybe didn't do this when you were in high school, right? So we all just want to make sure that we're on the right path and we're taking the right measures to do what we need to do by the time senior year comes when it comes to standardized testing. So tonight, all the 10th grader, juniors took the PSAT in October. So this presentation now is to kind of pick up, from there and say, well, now what, right? I got my score back. What's next? Okay. And I did do a presentation here recently on the digital SAT. So we're going to discuss that a little bit, but we're going to now compare that to the ACT. Right? So now we're going to go into the difference between the two exams. So to get started, we're going to review what is the PSAT, the digital SAT, and the ACT, and what the next steps should be. Okay? So does anyone have any idea what the PSAT even is? Throw it at me. Practice SAT, right? Does anyone know what the major differences between the SAT and the PSAT? Okay. So the PSAT is a practice test, just as you said. And this is going to kind of compare the two side by side. The only other difference, really, the two main differences is that there's no trigonometry on the PSAT, so it's a little bit easier. And the scoring is a bit different. So, I just was talking to a parent and she was like, oh, on the PSAT, we dropped our score down a little bit. And I said, but you do know that the range is a 320 to a 1560. So the ceiling isn't actually 1600. And she was like, oh, well, then he didn't go down, right? So that's something to keep in mind. The scoring scale is different because they look at it as, it's less intense, it's an easier exam, and they want you to improve, and that's where it gives you that extra 80 points to move up when you take the actual test, right? And the College Board says that when you do take the PSAT, if you would have taken the SAT on the exact same day, your scores would be the same. That's how similar the tests are. Okay? Aside from that, really, this is for students to get the testing environment down, right? It's very important for you to see and the questions and get a feel for the test because it's so different from the test you take in high school. So it's also now they've sat for the full exam. They know what to expect when to go into it and really seeing those questions and the content so that they can prep and know moving forward. So the PSAT is the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test, only when you take it in your junior year. But only the top 1% of scorers in each state actually will earn a scholarship. So let's break this down a little bit. So 1.6 million juniors will take the PSAT. 50,000 of them are recognized scholars. And recognized is literally just recognized. Like they don't get anything, you just get recognized And that's something that's awesome for your college application. Then out of that, 16,000 are considered national merit semifinalists, still just recognition. And then there's 15,000 finalists out of 1.6 million PSAT takers. Does anybody know how much the scholarship actually is? $2,500. Okay? So really, this is a great, it's mostly for recognition for you when you apply to college. Okay? So, a lot of people always, are like, oh, the national merit, but it's a very difficult pool to get into, and not many people get that scholarship. And like we said, it's not like this large, significant amount of money. Okay? So once you've taken your PSAT, you've taken a computer adaptive test, you've seen the SAT style questions, and you received a practice score. So, we're going to learn more about what this computer adaptive means, but this year the PSAT was the first time that it was digital. I received varying feedback from students at college fairs right after the test. I was at a few fairs. Many students came up to me and said it was easy. I breezed right through. I thought the content was easier and it was just easier to get through. Also, the annotation tools that are on it, I don't know if you've seen one of the past presentations or no, but there's a lot of additional tools now on that test, like the timer and the highlighter and the calculator, and that also was easier. So, who can tell me what the number one factor is that colleges look at on your application? What is the number one thing that college admissions officers care about? Out of everything on your application, what's the most important thing? Any guesses? That's great. It's a great guess. Anybody else want to throw something out there? It's very simple. Your grades. Number 2 is your high school curriculum, which is the APs. They want to see you challenged yourself. Okay? So, but number 1 above all else is going to be your high school grades, and then number 3 will be test scores. Test scores and essay kind of fall in that same area, but test scores are also important because that's going to be another barometer for college admissions to compare you to other students. But the reason we say that the reason grades are so important too, and the reason we always try and make people aware of what this prep timeline is because it's extremely important during your high school junior year and senior year that you are still dedicated to getting those high grades. We don't want to see your grades get impacted because you're taking an SAT prep course or you're overwhelming yourself, right? Or taking too many AP courses and then your percentage goes down. That's definitely something that's going to be particular to each student, but we just want you to make sure that whatever it's going to take for you to maintain your high grades, that's the most important thing. Like I said, then they look at your curriculum, the full transcript. Did this person challenge themselves? How many, years of language did they take? Did they take APs, right? And then it's going to be your test score. So let's play a little game, get some interactive going on. Do college admissions tests like the SAT measure your intelligence? True or false? Just shout it at me. False. Correct. Do they reflect your high school GPA? False. Will they predict your college GPA? False. Now, how about, do they test what you've learned in high school? I see her go. And that's the exact answer. Oh, the exact answer is yes and no. Because it is going to test what you've learned in high school. You need to have that curriculum under your belt. But at the same time, the way you take the test is totally different. And we'll break that down. So do SAT and ACT scores still matter? So at the Princeton Review, we have a book called The Best 389 colleges, and every year we update this list and we pick out all the best schools in the country and we break it down in this book to give you a full, how would it be a best fit for you, right? And out of all these schools, 7% of schools were test required, 2% of schools were test flexible, 85% are test optional, and 6% are test free. Now, what do you think is the percentage of colleges that actually still want to see high test scores, though? 93% of schools will still want to see high test scores if the student submits them. So this kind of gets sticky with test optional, right? Because there's all this hearsay and there's so many questions out there about it. But let's kind of go into more about what this means. Test optional admissions processes do not require SAT and ACT scores for admissions consideration. That being said, test optional schools will receive more applications and have lower admission rates. And if any school or scholarship you apply to requires an SAT or ACT score, your process is not test optional. So for example, if you're prepping your list of colleges and you have 9 and one of them requires a test score, but all of them, the rest are test optional, you still want to get that test score. And we look at test scores as an insurance policy because a lot of the times when you're prepping in your early junior year or even later sophomore year, you don't know what colleges you want to apply to yet, right? But you still need to prep ahead of time and get those scores because you don't know by the time you go, you might fall in love with a school and they require a test score, right? So it's all about looking at it as an insurance policy to have in your back pocket because things can also change. Test optional admissions isn't something crazy new, but it got extremely popular after the pandemic because nobody could get access to testing sites. And also, if you think about it, if you're test optional, those colleges are getting more applications and they're making $70 a pop off those applications, right? So you have to kind of look at it both sides. The colleges are making out pretty great having these policies. But does that mean that they're going to still not look at performance and applications with a fine-tooth comb? No, right? So it's really important to, if you are looking, you are prepping your list to make sure and do your due diligence of who's actually test optional versus who is not. Another point that I'll make here is certain programs and scholarships require these test scores. So if you want to get into I use this example all the time. Like if you're like, I want to get into NYU as an example. Well, general liberal arts admissions might be test optional. But if you want to take a specific program at that school, that program might require a test score. So this is why it's extremely important that you do that due diligence and you find out those questions because you don't want to assume and then when it's time for application time, you don't have the score under your belt. Yes. Yeah, it'll be clear, but the way they word it can sometimes be tricky to like they'll say like we're test optional, but when students submit them, they're highly considered. So it's just be careful, right? And also, I always say speak to an admissions counselor. If you have a school in mind that you're extremely interested in, set up that meeting and say what's in my best interest because I always say be the squeaky wheel and ask questions. Don't just ever assume. Okay? So standardized tests are completely different from high school tests. And this is what we were chatting about before where I said this is when prep comes in because if you sit for a high school test, it's totally different than when you sit for a standardized test. So if you look at these side by side, when you're sitting for a high school test, you have limited subject matter. It's content knowledge. You have plenty of time. Your teacher might give you partial credit or extra credit. It's human graded and it's one element of the grade. If you take those skills and you sit down for a standardized test, you'd be like, what am I doing, right? If you've never seen it before. And sometimes students will have 100 grade point average and then they sit for the test and they score below average. And that's because the strategies are different, right? So this is tested on years of material, strategies. It's rigorously timed. There's right or wrong answers. It's machine graded and only one score matters. Okay? So this is why that prep is so important. Okay, so let's break down the similarities and the difference of these two tests. There's a lot of good little Easter eggs in here and insights. So the SAT and the ACT serve the exact same purpose. They're college admissions exams. So many people, like the most common question I get is, do colleges prefer one or the other? No, that is absolutely not true. No, you cannot super score an ACT and an SAT score. I've gotten that question too because the the score numbers are completely different the way they're graded. We'll get into that. So basically, it's just to get into college. That's what they're there for. And to give you a little bit of background as well, when college admissions officers are sitting down, they have thousands of applications. But these applications are coming from students all around the country. You have students that are coming from small, little suburban towns. You have students from big cities. You have students from affluent areas. You have students that from not so affluent areas that might not have opportunities to travel to Europe in their senior year, right? So everyone comes from a different place, and with that comes different academic opportunity, okay? So what happens is maybe a school might not offer the most APs to a student, so they don't have that chance to show on their application. So what does the score do? A score can take two students, put them directly next to each other, and no matter what their background is and where they come from, they can be evenly measured and compared. That's the purpose of a standardized test score. It's something we don't actually think about. We're just like, oh, the College Board just made this decision, right? And these tests are so frustrating. Why do we have to do them? That's really the nitty-gritty real reason. It sets a barometer so that everyone's equal, dependent on background. So both the SAT and the ACT are in-person tests. They're going to be taken at a testing site, and they're proctored live. You saw this with the digital PSAT. No, it is not taken at home. It is still the exact same way. You have proctors. You're being watched the whole time. You're being timed. It's literally just on a Chromebook. Okay? Both the SAT and the ACT require students to analyze reading passages, edit and revise writing, solve high school math, and analyze scientific data. So what's the differences here, though? On the ACT, you'll have 4 long reading passages with 10 questions to each of those passages. On the digital SAT, you have tiny little excerpts and a question. Excerpt, question, right? So there's not those long reading passages anymore. Let's talk about the scientific part, because that's a huge thing that I always hear from people. And it's like there's science on the ACT, but there's not on the SAT. Well, not technically. There's a dedicated science section on the ACT, but the SAT will sprinkle in science questions throughout the reading and writing passages. Okay? So you're still going to be asked when you're doing those reading and writing questions to analyze the scientific data. It's just not a specific section. Does that make sense? So it's still, we say, if you prep for one, you're 80% prepped for the other. You're going to be asked to solve high school math problems, and that kind of plays into those questions we played, right? So you still need to know your high school curriculum with math. And yes, the reading and writing has that. So now let's break them down side by side. I'm just going to click through this for you. So, computer-based at a testing site, paper and pencil at a testing site. Now the digital SAT is 2 hours. The ACT is 3 hours and 35 minutes with an optional essay, or 2 hours and 55 minutes without the essay. One's going to have 2 sections, reading, writing, and math. The other is going to have them broken out, right? No penalties for wrong answers. I get this question a lot from parents because when they were in school, they would get penalty for having wrong answers. That is not the case anymore. The SAT no longer has an essay option. ACT does. On the digital SAT, you can use your the Desmos calculator that's built into the SAT app, the Blue Book app, and you can use your own personal calculator on all the sections if you prefer. ACT, students can use their own calculator on the math portion. The average score in 2022 on the SAT was a 1050. Average score for the ACT is a 20. And we'll go down the score rubrics for both of them. Any questions on this? Yes. No, it's optional. So I'm going to break it down when I go over the ACT scoring rubric, but pretty much it'll give you an opportunity if you want to boost your score, because the ACT score is a composite score of an average of all your sections together. So it's just an opportunity to get extra points. But if you feel that you're strong in math and the other and you don't feel it, you don't want to do it, you don't have to. And this is the section by section. So you have the SAT with the 2 modules with the 4 individual sections in there. And then the ACT is the 4 sections. Now, by looking at this, what would you say is the biggest difference between these 2 tests and the way they are? Like, what sticks out to you? The timing, right? If you look at that ACT, you have 60 questions in 60 minutes. That's 1 minute a question of math. Okay? We're going to break this down because this has a few things to talk about. So, the ACT and SAT will cover similar content, but the content's going to be delivered to you differently. If you know anything about the digital test, it's going to be computer adaptive, right? And the questions are weighted all different based on the difficulty. But the ACT, every question has the same point value, okay? There's the timing, like we said. The ACT, if you're a fast-paced student, and also the ACT, they say the wording is more straightforward. So it's less tricky, less little mind games. The questions are going to be more straightforward. That's the way they write it. And also another little fun fact, what do you guys think? Are the ACT and the SAT under the same umbrella, or are they competitors? Take a whack at it. Same umbrella? They are like Pepsi and Coca-Cola, my friends. They are 2 completely different entities, and they are competitors. Just to let you guys know. So that's a little fun fact, right? So everyone on the coast usually sticks with the SAT, and then what happened was Middle America, they were like, well, we're going to compete. Let's make our own test. And that's where the ACT came from, okay? So they compete with one another. That's why I wouldn't be surprised if in the next few years we get a little digital announcement from the ACT. Who knows, okay? But that's just always good to know. So the ACT, like I said, faster paced but more straightforward. SAT, some students prefer having them more time to work through their questions, and they don't mind the wording as much because they can prep and get through it, okay? When it comes to these 2 tests, we tell students that like let's say you have a junior that took their first PSAT. They get the score back. Okay, I'm indifferent. I don't know about this ACT. Maybe I would fare better on it. Our suggestion is if you're unsure, you take a practice test of each one. You see which one you fare better on and which one you hate less. And that's the one you stick to, okay? I've said this, and I say this all the time in my presentations. Don't drive yourself crazy flip-flopping. Oh, I registered for this ACT and now this SAT and now I'm back to the ACT. Stay on one path, because that's how you're going to move the needle on your score. If you're bouncing back and forth, I would rather say quality over quantity with these exams, Okay, does that make sense? Like prep, take your time, and then take the test and sit for it. But practice test, we have the free practice test on our website. It's completely free, and you go on and you can take it, and we immediately give you a score report back so you see how you did. And some students might say, oh, I prefer the ACT, right? I didn't really like that digital SAT. So again, the science section will scare off some students, but remember that those questions are going to be trickled in both exams either way. So it's not like it's this big section that's different and going to really make that much of an impact to your score. So also, the math questions on the ACT are solely multiple choice. So they're only multiple choice on the ACT. On the SAT, about 25% of the math is student-produced answers. So you will have to do the work yourself. So some people do like with the ACT, oh, okay, it's all multiple choice. I have a better chance at that. Now we went over the weight of the questions is different, and we'll get into that further in the presentation. We have the optional essay on the ACT. The format is different. And then there's one more way that the SAT is super different from the ACT, and we all know it's digital, not online, because it's a computer-based application. It doesn't run off of Wi-Fi. So this is the new SAT. You have the four modules, 4 sections, 2 modules. This is the way they break it down. So if you want to take a look at just the number of questions, see on the math section, you have 35 minutes, multiple choice and student-produced responses. So here's the computer adaptive test. Did anybody in this room come here for my digital SAT presentation? Okay, so you know what the deal is now. Did you get your PSAT scores back? Were you happy with them? What did you feel? How did your student fare? Did they like it? If they were indifferent? Okay. So for anyone who's never seen this presentation or seen the breakdown of the digital SAT with the new computer adaptive way of it, this is it, okay? So you're going to have the first module, and the first module is going to be the same for everybody. Based on how you do in that first module, you're going to go into second module and students get sorted. In the second module, you will either get handed questions that have a higher point value or a lower point value. That's the only difference, is that you're going to be capped. You can't reach the full 1600 if you get the less difficult module in part 2. Okay, and what it means is that you showed the test that you can handle those high rigor questions. So now for part 2, it's going to be the questions are easier, and you're just capped and you can't make it to the full 16. We don't know where that cap is. The College Board will not tell us that information, right? And the biggest thing about this is students, we can't get into our heads about this and overthink it. It's just another thing that the College Board does to trick you, right? This is what they do. When I was talking to students at college fairs, not one person was like, oh, I was so thrown off by those modules. They were like, oh, I didn't even think about it. I just went through the test. And I've actually received great feedback on people's scores. They really didn't crash from a digital test. They actually said they found that they did better. So that's just feedback from what I've heard out in the field. Do I have any questions on the way this works? Is everyone pretty comfortable with this concept at this point? Okay. But this is one of my favorite slides because it's kind of like a moment, right? Because when you hear more difficult questions and less difficult questions, and then you're like, what does that even mean? If it's not based on intelligence, then what is it based off of, right? Well, what that means is that the College Board, when they designed to change the weight of the questions, they went through years of historical data, and all the questions that the majority of people got wrong are the ones that they made the higher points. And it's the ones that are people get easily tricked by. So it's not knowledge based or intelligence based. It could be something as simple as like, when I say peanut butter, you guys want to say jelly, right? When I say, what do cows drink? You immediately want to say milk, right? Those are the questions that they will make hard because they know they're easy stumpers. So it's not knowledge and intelligence. So that's why so many people got upset about these modules being like, it's not fair, right? But that just means you need to prep to catch those questions. That's all it is. It's not if you're smarter or less. It's all about prep. Okay? So that doesn't mean that those are easy, medium or difficult for you, because it's not intelligence or knowledge based. So the SAT will use the same scoring scale, the 400 to 1600. You'll have the reading and writing, the math, and the scores will be used as always. So if you did take the paper and pencil in December, for example, and now you want to take the digital in March, if the school allows, you can then super score a digital and a paper and pencil test score. I get a lot of questions about super scoring, and this is honestly something that didn't change because it's always been up to the specific college. So it's not like the college board decided, now that it's digital, we can't super score. It's going to be the exact same as it always was. Ask the college. Back to my theme. Ask questions. Okay? So this goes back to your question back there about the ACT scoring. So it's a composite score of 1 to 36. Each section you get graded 1 to 36, and then they give you an average score of all the combined sections. So if you're and this might also be preferable to you as well if you're a student who does amazing in reading and writing, and then you do the essay. That helps students sometimes bring their overall score up because it is a composite. It's not just on a multiple choice Scantron, right? So it's gonna I'm sorry, I said that wrong. That didn't come out the way I meant it. They're not like, they do an average. It's not just like yes or like right or wrong. Does that make sense? And once again, optional essays is scored separately. So what's a good score? So looking at all of these scores, tell me what you think a good score is. Like what's your dream score for your student? Shout it out. 1500. What'd you say? 14, yes. Anyone else? Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you. A good score is a score that's going to get you into the college that you want to get into. Okay? This is the kicker, guys. Like I said earlier, let's bring it back. High school grades are very important, right? And it's all going to be one package. And high school grades were number 1 on that list, and test scores were number 3. So what this means is, and back to my theme, ask questions. When you have that list of colleges, Google, find out what the average score is. Whether it's the ACT or the SAT, what is the average admissions score for this school that I want to get into? That's the score that you aim for. 1500 is amazing, but if you need a 1250 to get into your school and you're at a 12, you only need 50 more points and then you're good, and then you could focus on your grades, right? Because we don't want students being like, I need a 16, I need a 15, and then they're focusing so much and they're taking these tests and then it gets taken away from other things, right? So find out the score that's going to get you into the school that you want. Focus on that score because you're probably closer to it than you think, right? Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So let's talk about next steps. Planning your prep. So here are the dates. I have a flyer out front with all the test dates on them. March, we're going to have the first digital, and then from then on, it's all digital. Okay, so moving forward after the March test, the SAT will be forever digital. ACT is forever paper and pencil as of now. Okay, these are the dates. As you could tell, some of the months are, like 1 month they'll have the SAT, 1 month we have the ACT, so they kind of flip-flop. But the first step would be deciding the test date that you're going to go for. Right now, for the March SAT, that's a very popular SAT for juniors, is the March and the May. Okay, so I would suggest, if you are planning to enroll in a course or do some sort of prep for that, you want to register on the College Board's website for the test, because you don't want to miss that window, because then you can't sit for the test, right? That's number one. Same with the ACT. You want to go on, you want to register, and then you could plan your prep around that test. You could take a practice test. You could buy a book, self-prep online, take a course, work with a tutor. We are offering a course here at Huntington for the March SAT, and that is an in-person course. I have it actually in the presentation, so you'll see. We'll break that down, but we're having an in-person course here, and the courses are fantastic because it leads you up to the day of the test. There's 3 built-in practice tests, and the whole point is to see the needle move. So you take a test, you go to 2 classes, then you take another test, then you go to 2 classes, then you take another. And every test you take, you want to see the score go up, and then it literally ends like days before the actual test. So it's fresh, it's right there, you're ready to go, and then that 4th test should be where you score the highest. Okay, that's the way these courses work. Also, like I was saying earlier about the modules in the digital SAT, at the Princeton Review, we take great pride in this. Our practice test is the only one that will tell you what module you got. So the College Board's practice test does not tell you what module you got into in part 2, but ours will in the score report. So if you're interested, for example, with the SAT, your student just took, you're like, yeah, but I want more detail, right? Like, where do we need to prep from? You could take that practice test, boom, the second you submit it, you get a full breakdown. Every question you got right or wrong, every section, what module you got into, where you need to improve. These practice tests are awesome. So I highly suggest taking advantage of that and setting up some prep. So we're going to do March and May, 2 options at the high school this year. Tuesdays for March, Wednesdays for May. See which one works with your schedule best if you are interested. We also do offer live online, so if your student has a very busy schedule, sports, plays, and all that jazz, the online courses do have more flexibility. But the in-person, this is gold. Not many people have the in-person, so the fact that Miss Alomia is hosting this year is fantastic. What do you mean? Oh, yeah, you can access this information. Yeah, and don't worry, if you need anything, you could always contact me. And also, if you did register for tonight, which I highly suggest, I have a QR code out there. I'm sending this presentation to everybody tomorrow, and with all this information in it too. So if you are interested, make sure you scan that QR code. Yeah, we're doing SAT. Just seems it's a more popular test, so we offer the SAT course. And especially this year with the digital, we did want to make sure that those in-person courses could accommodate, just so that students, are prepped for it. But yeah, there's ACT live online. There's so many schedules available. So if you are interested, yes. Do you mean like what do you mean for the way your brain works, or do you mean the way the colleges will look at it? It does not matter at all. No, they will never. And to give you some insight, with college admissions, when they look at the breakdown of your application, everything gets an internal rating of 1 to 10. So, like, if they're looking at your ACT or SAT score, to them, it's either a 1 through a 10. So they don't even see which test it doesn't matter to them. Okay? And then we also have a lot of free resources. So we have those practice tests I was telling you about. We have college search tools. In the guidance office, there's so many books on the 389 college book. There's all different books that your students can access if they're just unsure of the colleges they want to look at, or what they want to do. And then we have the course and tutoring discounts. Huntington families get 30% off of courses, and then you receive 10% off of tutoring if you are interested. So do I have any questions? Yes. Like a math course? That's actually a really great question. I would look into, we have like academic tutoring. So it would the course will cover everything. I would suggest if you just want ACT math tutoring, I would think about a tutor, because they would go specific onto that, and it's really tailored to what you need instead of like sitting through a whole course. You know what I mean? So I would suggest either tutoring or the academic prep. And also, I wanted to mention my card is out there, and I do consultations. So, I'll set up like 30 minutes with parents, and we'll chat and go through your timeline and, just where your student's at. And I can help you guide in the right direction and help set you up with prep. And, we have like people who specialize in customized needs. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah, you can take it more than once. So the registration, there's a deadline, and then I think sometimes too you have to wait for like the registration to open. So I think they open them like as they come up. I would take it one at a time, because you don't know, you could get your score back and then you do wonderfully. But yeah, you can take as many as you'd like. There's no cap. My suggestion is to, though, make sure you get on that register, because they're offered at testing sites, and you want to make sure that you get the testing site you want, right? So that's even with the March test. I'm telling people, like, go on, because it's going to fill up quick, because it's like one of the most popular ones. Did that answer your question? You can. I've had students come up to me and be like, I haven't even taken it yet. It really is up to like your college admissions timeline, right? Like if you're someone who's super like, I want, early decision, right? That would be, you want to have that done. But you can do it in early senior year and then submit it, because the college deadlines for applications are all different. So if it works for you, you could still do that. And then you could also prep like over the summer and then take it in like October or December if the summer is easier for you, because you're not as busy, right? These students have so much on their plate, it's hard. So that's another reason why I suggest the live online, because there's so many schedules and you could find what tailors to you best. Okay, anybody else? You guys back there have anything for me? You've been great. I appreciate you coming out. Give yourselves a pat on the back for even just being here, because it shows that you want to make sure that you guys are set and you're organized. So good for you. Your kids are lucky. Have a good evening and happy holidays, everybody. And feel free to take my card and reach out to me, okay? Yeah, you're welcome.
So if you have any questions, or if you want to learn more about the Princeton Review or any other test programs, definitely go on the website, the guidance website through the district. You can go and find all of the information, as well as our guidance Google site, which can also be found under guidance. So if you have any questions, we'll be here to answer your specific questions. And thank you so much. Have a great night. Happy holidays. And we'll see you in January for our 11th grade student and parent workshop. So that's coming up like the first week in January. So take care. Bye bye.